Psychological safety is a game changer in terms of whether you feel like you are just surviving in your life or thriving. When we're able to identify when we are psychologically safe or when we feel psychologically unsafe is a huge determinant of our ability to find success in our relationships, in our work, in our family systems. And the quicker we are at identifying instances and encounters and situations in which we are not psychologically safe, the quicker we can separate ourselves from those toxic situations and move into places where we do feel that we indeed are safe and secure, both physically and mentally. So this terminology may be new for some folks. In fact, it was for me over the past couple of years. I had definitely been in situations where I felt psychologically unsafe, but I didn't have the language around it into which to diagnose it or identify it. But oftentimes we hear of this reaction that humans can have, and really all living species can have, which is fight or flight. It's this sort of ingrained response that we have as animals in terms of our ability to survive in the wild. And that actually still holds a lot of weight in our lives as humans and our responses and reactions to certain situations. So in many cases, that's where people stop in terms of their awareness of psychological safety. Well, we either leave the situation, we flee, or we defend ourselves and we fight back. Well, there's a lot more nuance there, particularly for women who are often conditioned to endure situations of psychological abuse in order to be sort of a submissive role in certain relationships or cultural settings, even in today's age. And so these other elements of psychological safety, in addition to fight or flight, is freeze or fawn. Now, these two concepts are extremely important for women, even the most confident and self-assured women. We will find ourselves in situations in which we are stunned by the social dynamics around us, either directly related to us or to other people. And this freeze response, in terms of our psychological safety, is something within our embodied experience that tells us you're going to be better off if you don't do anything. And so what this does is it causes people to endure experiences that they otherwise would recognize as wrong or uncomfortable. And instead of removing oneself from the situation in terms of flight or defending oneself verbally or even just physically moving into a different area, which would be the fight response, we have this freeze response where our body sort of takes over and causes us to be non-responsive. And this can be a really scary feeling of paralysis. You may be in a work situation where someone in a higher power position has cornered you in a physical space and is communicating with you in a way that does not feel comfortable. You freeze. You don't know what's happening. This kind of deer caught in the headlights response comes over you. And oftentimes it's very hard afterward to figure out what exactly happened because you couldn't respond. And in some ways you just sort of stuff it or suppress those experiences and feelings and just try to move on to be able to function in a relationship situation or a work situation. Now, this other response in terms of feeling unsafe is to fawn. And this is in particular for women who are oftentimes conditioned to be people pleasers in situations that feel unsafe, to appease others at the expense of our own needs. And so when you feel that you're in this situation where you're continually catering to other people who are treating you in ways that do not make you feel that you are welcome, that you are safe, that you are accepted in the fullness of who you are, then you may take this response of fawning, of, again, appeasing or pleasing others, or making a situation seem less intense by bringing maybe sort of a more lightheartedness to it, or talking around an awkward situation. This is a highly protective mechanism that oftentimes enables us to avoid deeper feelings of discomfort, but unfortunately it puts us in a position of not addressing the harm that's being done to yourself and others in that situation. So psychological safety is sort of this lifelong journey of recognizing situations in which you are overriding feelings of not being seen as fully human, not being accepted as who you are, your identity not being fully embraced in a certain situation. In particular, if you are feeling othered, if you are a minority in a community, racially or gender-wise, sexual orientation-wise, if there are aspects of your identity that feel othered by people in your context, you may experience these feelings of not being psychologically safe. The more we can identify it, the quicker our response is to be able to extricate ourselves from those situations, look for healthier contexts, remove people from our lives that are no longer serving us in a healthy way, and really being able to advocate for ourselves in ways that oftentimes we're conditioned to not listen to those feelings of uncertainty, to not listen to that gut feeling of this doesn't feel right, to suppress those feelings of that spider sense, that sixth sense. So trust those feelings. That intuition and that embodied response is telling you something very important, and it will help you to stay on a track toward thriving in your life and having relationships that are full and life-giving.